Hi, I'm Ben. Welcome to my book corner. We have another tag video for you today. This one was created by the phenomenal Melinda over at A Web of Stories. If you haven't already checked Melinda's channel out, I highly recommend you do. I shall link it down below. She does some amazing bookish content. Highly recommend checking her out and dropping likes and subscribes her way. And Melinda made this tag with the idea of either introducing an author that you really love and a bit about why you love it so much, or authors that are perhaps a bit smaller or lesser known. So this is the Let Me Introduce You tag. There are 3 prompts for this one, plus a tag some people prompt at the end. Let's just dive straight in. Prompt 1 is multiple levels. So which author are you introducing? Tell us something about their life and how you came to meet them, and why did you decide to introduce them. So the author I want to talk about today is Rex Burke. So Rex is a UK-based author who originally started by writing travel guides for things like the Rough Guide series. However, like many people, when COVID hit, couldn't go out because not a billionaire, so the rules applied. And so when stuck indoors with very few places that you could actually go, Rex decided to dive into one of his other loves, which is sci-fi, and decided to write some sci-fi stories. And that led to this book, Orphan Planet, or series I should say, because this is a trilogy called the Odyssey Earth series. And I first discovered Rex through my Your Paper Quest book subscription service. Orphan Planet was one of the books in my first box. First one that I read out of the box, actually, because I saw some similarities in there to some other authors that I do quite like. And since then, which I think that was April that I read it, I've read all Rex's books. So that is the Odyssey Earth trilogy of Orphan Planet, Starbound and Twin Landing. I've just said them in the wrong order, but never mind. As well as Standalone's The Wrong Stop and Third Lock from the Sun, and a prequel short story for the Odyssey Earth series called First Date, which makes Rex my most read author of this year. Couple of reasons I want to introduce him. First off, he's an amazing guy. I've had the opportunity to interact with him a few times. He's genuinely funny. He's really kind. He's really supportive. This doesn't really have anything to do with it, but I like to show stuff off. So after I finished Starbound at the back end of last month, I replied to a tweet by Your Paper Quest about what I'd just read and what I was reading. And I ended up talking to Rex, and I jokingly said, "Now I've read all your books, do I get an award?" So we have a little sticker that's on my planning book. So I have the Top Reader Award from Rex Burke, which is the only award that I've won since 1999. So there we go, that's fun. And he also sent me a couple of bookmarks, which there's a QR code on there. I don't know how well that'll pick up if you take a picture of it on your phone. And also a couple of Odyssey Earth crew badges, which thank you for those. But the main reason I want to talk about Rex, I've read all of his books this year, which means I must like them. And Rex is a self-published indie author, and the best thing you can do to help indie authors out is to talk about them, and I'm having a great time with the indie authors I've discovered so far. Rex is the one whose back catalogue I have finished first, so I'm starting there, because I think a lot of people, especially people who don't necessarily read much sci-fi, will get into these books, but I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's dive into prompt number 2. So the second prompt, and I've already started to answer this: what type of books do they write? Such as what kind of genres do they write in, or what authors are they compared to? So Rex is predominantly a sci-fi author. Well, I'll say predominantly. All Rex's books so far have been sci-fi. But what I would say is that they're what I would call comfortable sci-fi. And Rex has spoken about this in an interview he did with Your Paper Quest, which I shall also link for you to check out, talking about writing sci-fi that is approachable and just fun, because some sci-fi, especially hard sci-fi, can be quite dense. And whilst there's nothing wrong with that, it can be quite intimidating sometimes to read, whereas these in some ways feel like absurdist hugs. There are some comparisons here to Douglas Adams, which Rex himself does shirk a little bit, because such a big name author does... Yeah, there's certain expectations there, and Rex discovered quite early on, looking for beta readers, that maybe that is not a helpful comparison, shall we say. I think this is a very British book in terms of humour, which obviously being British, I approve of this immensely. It takes an unflinching look at certain relationships, especially younger people and teenagers, and some of the absolute absurd nonsense that tends to occur around them, and probably did around us when we were younger, if you're like me and over the hill at 40 plus. And it just minds that individual sort of character work and sort of turns it up to 11, which I really, really appreciate. If you're looking for it in terms of vibe and banter, in many ways this reminds me of the TV series Red Dwarf, if you sort of brought down some of the language a little bit. And so you have the Orphan Earth trilogy, which is set on a spaceship, and the framing for this is relatively typical sci-fi. It's alternative history from the early 2000s, so there's plenty of pop culture references from the 90s and before, which makes sense for the characters. We managed to muck up the planet, which, you know, we are doing a pretty good job of that anyway, and the Odyssey Earth was launched to colonize a faraway world. And you have the fish out of water trope going on here, with characters that are revived on a spaceship which they were never meant to be revived on, and then a subverting of roles as well. So a pretty typical sci-fi setup there. Space, alien planets, exploration, but it doesn't go too heavy into the science beyond it being a framing device, which makes it really, really easy to get into. You then have Wrong Stop, which follows a group of young men backpacking across Europe, basically doing the European beer train, when they accidentally stumble across an alien that's been stranded. Some topical stuff there about the Elgin marbles as well, worth mentioning, which keeps coming up in the UK media at this time of year. And then finally you have Third Lock from the Sun, which is kind of a genre shift in many regards. This gives a sci-fi twist to some well-known fantasy tropes and creatures, set on a remote Scottish island, pretty much disconnected from the world, where a young man goes to do work experience for the summer, and discovers many things about the island that people maybe don't want him to know about, and a lot of the islanders don't know about as well. And what I love about all of these is the sense of humour that permeates throughout. These are very British books in their humour. They're quite absurd. There's a bit of satire in here as well, but again, it never feels mean-spirited, and in that way it does remind me a little bit of certain things from Terry Pratchett's books as well. In terms of it, there is some poking of fun at certain things, but it never feels nasty, which I really appreciate. And they're just a lot of fun. Prompt number 3. Where should a new reader start with their books? So, realistically, you could start at Orphan Planet, Book 1 of Odyssey Earth. You could start with Third Lock from the Sun. Personally, I would say start with Wrong Stop. Simply because it's a self-contained story, because I know some people don't really like to commit to series, although I would say Odyssey Earth is well worth it. I think the whole vibe, because it is just sci-fi rather than a bit of a mixing like Third Lock is, might make it a easier introduction as well, and it gives you a great idea of how the character dynamics play out, especially as you have these. Prompt number 3 is, where should people start with their books? And to be honest, as long as you don't start on book 2 of the Odyssey Earth series, although you could do, and the foreword tells you that you can, don't do a me, like I normally do with things. Realistically, you can start with either The Wrong Stop, Third Lock from the Sun, or if you're somebody who likes series, Orphan Planet itself, or even by signing up for the Rex Burke newsletter and having access to the short story First Date that is the prelude to Odyssey Earth, following Captain Juno Washington and their first interaction with the AI that at that point is known as Omnia. Personally, I would say start at the wrong stop, simply because it gives you a standalone, self-contained story. Teenagers backpacking across Europe is as chaotic as you would expect it to be, especially when they bump into an alien and end up being chased by less than competent secret services. So that's always fun. And also, because you have a group of characters that know each other for a period of time, you get an immediate sense of what the banter and the humour is like within Rex's books, straight off the bat, without having characters having to get to know each other. So it gives you almost an idea of what the end point is for those interactions, and I absolutely adore it. But any of the options that I've said are perfectly good places to start. It's also worth mentioning that Rex's books are available through Kindle Unlimited here in the UK, and I presume elsewhere as well. So if you want to check out Rex's stuff and you have Kindle Unlimited, that is a potential option as well. So there we go. That's where I think you should start with Rex's books. And that just leaves us with number 4, tag some people. So if you've watched this video and you think that there's an author that you wish to spotlight, be it because you love them or you feel they just need more attention, consider yourself tagged. And if you would tag me in the description of your video as well, so I can add even more stuff potentially to my ever-growing TBR and author list. Well, that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you consider checking out Rex's books as well, because they are a lot of fun. Thank you for watching, and I shall catch you all very soon.